Welcome, builders of the internet! My name is Jessa, and today I'll be talking about procrastination, exploring what it is, some of the common reasons there are for it, effects of procrastination, and some tips that might help you manage these behaviours. As always, you can find my sources and timestamps in the description.
It's building on my mind.
What is procrastination? Procrastination is when there is unnecessary and unwanted delay in our actions or decisions, something that I'm sure many of us, including myself, are probably familiar with. A classic example of this is when you have an assignment, say, at school or university that's coming up, but you keep putting off actually doing this work, maybe right until the last minute. I'm definitely at least a little bit guilty of this. A key component to procrastination is where an individual actually has the self-awareness that by putting off doing this work, it puts them in a worse off position. There are lots of articles and sources talking about multiple types of procrastination, but for the purposes of this video, I'm just going to be talking about two main types. When people procrastinate, they can either be passive or active. Passive procrastinators are more the stereotypical view of procrastination, where they opt not really to do anything at all, have a negative outlook, and fail to complete their tasks on time, whereas active procrastinators consciously make the decision to do other things in the meantime because they prefer to work under pressure. What are some of the reasons that we give for these behaviours? This part of the video applies more so to passive procrastination, which is generally seen as more harmful or leading to more negative consequences. I'm sure many of us have heard of or personally given some of the wonderful reasons that we procrastinate, including but not limited to 1. Believing we work better under pressure. 2. Telling ourselves we can do it once it's the right place and the right time. Say, for example, oh, I can only work on this when my desk is clean, or when there's no annoying background noise, so I'll just wait till that problem is sorted first, and then I'll start. Another thing we might do when we procrastinate is, say, diminish how important things are, and telling ourselves, yeah, this assessment is only worth a really small proportion overall, so it doesn't really matter what I get in it. Or maybe we say that we have too much other stuff that's going on at the moment, which is why we're not doing that specific task. Let's take a quick further look into these reasons. So the first one, I was telling myself that I work better under pressure. I do genuinely believe that people can perform better with the additional pressures, but it is worth considering, have you tried and tested this for yourself, or have you only ever practiced finishing things at the last minute? Often there isn't really a fair comparison between people actually working in advance with great preparation and planning compared to working very last minute. So it might be worth testing for yourself, what is it like to try and focus and get in the zone when there isn't a deadline looming over my head? It's also definitely worth adding that working at the last minute often increases the chance that something will go wrong. Recently, I've had the mild catastrophe of laptop issues with upcoming deadlines, and I'm sure others have had instances of technology issues or other problems like coming down with an illness or having to take care of somebody or taking care of other matters. The next excuse I usually give is needing the perfect environment, the I can only do this in the right place at the right time kind of excuse. I'm sure this goes without saying, but I think it is very unlikely that there will ever be a perfect time to do things. To some degree, when we are looking for the optimum conditions, we tend to highlight the imperfections of the situation, so we end up noticing all the little minor inconveniences all the more, and using this as justification for not doing anything at all. One of my life mottos is don't think about it, just do it, and I think this very much applies to this sort of scenario. When I think about things too much, I start giving myself excuses and more reasons not to do something, and then I end up in a cycle of feeling guilty about it too, rather than when I just get on with it, which helps stop all this mental turmoil. The last reasons are to do with undermining how important things are to us. When we tell ourselves that things aren't really that important as we initially made out to be, or that we have too many other things going on which take precedence, the sad reality, for me anyways, is that I'm essentially telling myself that my goals aren't really important, and this justifies and rationalizes the behaviour that causes me to feel guilty and anxious. But what are the effects of procrastination? An early study has showed that students who tended to put off doing their work also earned lower grades than the others, as well as reporting higher amounts of stress and other illnesses. Essentially, the students who passively procrastinated suffered in both the quality of their work as well as their well-being. Passive procrastinators tend to be more pessimistic, with feelings of guilt, shame, anxiety, and depression when choosing to delay doing these necessary activities, which is why the underlying causes are not just in how good we are with time management, but also in how good we are with emotional regulation. Although you might be able to recognise that there is harm in not doing stuff, it's difficult to overcome the urge to do more pleasurable activities, the ones that provide instant gratification but more negative long-term consequences. Procrastination does have some benefits though. Students who delayed doing their work had lower initial levels of stress compared to their peers. There is also an argument that procrastinators tend to have increased levels of creativity, where they may come up with more innovative ways of accomplishing things, as well as having the potential to reduce the amount of time that it takes to do unnecessary tasks, making their work a bit more efficient. People who actively choose to procrastinate also tend to be more similar to people who don't procrastinate at all, in that they have better control of their time, emotional regulation, and perform just as well academically. Solutions. As I've just discussed, procrastination really isn't all that bad, but if you find yourself wanting to try and change these behaviours, here are 5 steps that I've personally found pretty helpful. The first is awareness. If you realise that you are procrastinating and you're not happy about it, perhaps reflect on the reasons for why you're behaving that way, and if there's any habits or patterns that you recognise that usually result in these behaviours. It's also really worth considering how it's making you feel, so you can decide whether it's best to make changes in your life. I personally notice that if I wake up really early and then stay in bed for ages instead of getting up immediately, it usually sets the precedence that I'll be lazy all day. When this happens, I feel unaccomplished, I feel really guilty, and find it really hard to get a good night's rest, which I quite dislike, so it makes me want to change these patterns and behaviours. My next step is looking at priorities and goals. As I've mentioned before, procrastination can give an indication to what you personally find really important. So think about what are the priorities in your life. It might be that you could give yourself half an hour at some point to focus and figure out the things that you want to do and what you want to achieve. Then think about what you'll do to get there. Having this at the back of your mind throughout the day might encourage you to do more of the things that will be fulfilling to you in the long term. The third consideration is environment. Although we very rarely have control over absolutely everything that goes on in our lives, a lot of us do have the opportunity to have a bit of control over the environments we choose to work in. If you really want to study and focus, don't put yourself in situations where you know you'll get distracted. For example, if background noise bothers you, it's not going to be in your best interests to choose to work in noisy cafes. There might be libraries open instead that can help you get in the zone better and have less distraction. Or maybe just wearing noise-cancelling headphones. You don't even need to be listening to music playing through them, but this might be able to help you concentrate and avoid other distractions. The fourth is perception. For me, how I perceive tasks has such a huge effect on how willing I am to do them. This is all much easier said than done, but if you reframe the thought process so that you're thinking of the positives of what you're doing and what you have to look forward to, instead of dwelling on the past. For example, I find that if it comes to say 8 PM and I feel like I haven't really done too much that day, instead of thinking to myself, oh no, 8 PM is too late to start anything, and ending up going on my phone for 3 hours instead, I usually am quite pleased that I still have 3 to 4 hours before the end of my day to do whatever I like. If the tasks you have to do are quite big and daunting, it can also really help to break them down into smaller and more manageable activities. I do this a lot with my university assessments. If it's, say, 1500 words, I'll break it down into smaller sections and into the points that I want to make, then focus on finishing these individual parts, bit by bit. To be honest, a lot of the challenge is in starting to do the productive things, so if you see the task as more doable, it can really help overcome that initial barrier. The last step is rewards. Such an important facet to becoming happier with your work habits is to make sure that you are giving yourself opportunities to really enjoy what you're doing. I think it is wonderful when people enjoy the work that they do, but it's also good to have other things outside of that to look forward to. I really enjoy socialising and spending time with other people, so I usually tell myself that if I get all of this work done, then I'm allowed to go out to my friends and actually enjoy myself without having those feelings of guilt at the back of my mind. Maybe every time you accomplish something, you can treat yourself to something, say for example online shopping or going for a spa day or something along those lines. These rewards can really help you feel better, less overwhelmed and more satisfied with what you've achieved, and you absolutely deserve these rewards. Thanks for watching this video. I think procrastination is something many of us struggle with, but it definitely has its positives that we can consider too. If you decide you want to get rid of your procrastinating habits though, my 5 steps are 1. Having an awareness, 2. Considering your priorities, 3. Choosing the ideal focusing environment, 4. Changing how you perceive your tasks, and 5. Rewarding yourself. That's all I have to say for now. I hope it helps build in your mind.
Thanks for watching this channel, it's building on my mind. Check out my other videos, but first hit the bell and comment, like, subscribe. Please, it really helps with the